Okay, we've got to the end of our knit. We're ready to undo our provisional cast on and join our tube in the round. So how do we do that? We're going to put our working live stitches to one side on the needle, and we're going to return to the provisional cast on, which you remember is my purple yarn here. Now, when we started knitting, we knitted into the provisional cast on and we created all these little loops in our provisional cast on, and those are what we're going to be picking up. So with the right side of my work facing me, I can see lots of little loops and I'm going to pick those up. If we go back to the beginning of the round, we remember that our beginning of round is actually the second half of this vertical stripe. So I want to pick up a stitch that's more or less in line with that first stitch we would knit in the round. And if I go above to the loops above, I'm going to actually pick up this sort of funny little stitch on the end there as my first stitch, and then I'm going to work into each of these little loops. Now the way that I pick up these loops is I simply slide my needle into the loop, just like that, from back to front into the loop. That makes sure it's aligned correctly on my needle, and I'm just going to work my way around. So that's my first stitch here. Then I'm going to go into my second stitch, back to front into the loops, and I'm going to work all the way around, picking up these stitches like so. Now it can get a little bit tight. You may decide to use a smaller needle. I'm going to persevere with my needle that I want to knit with. So as you can see me picking up all of those stitches from my working yarn. I'm going to leave the provisional yarn at the moment, and we'll deal with that in a minute. So as I work my way round, I'm just going to count to make sure that I'm picking up exactly the right number of stitches, and that will be the same number as the stitches I still have on my needles to finish knitting up here, and it's the same number that I cast on. So here we go. Let me pick up all of these stitches. And I've reached the end, and it's sort of a bit odd at the end because I have my yarn coming out of my last provisional loop here, and it's not clear what I'm meant to pick up, and it's like a half stitch at the end of the row. Now I know I want it to lie kind of over that last stitch in the round, which is the right hand stitch in that vertical stripe, so I want to sort of aim for it to be up here. Now technically it's this loop that really needs to be picked up, but because I know this loop is connected to this loop below, I think I'm just going to pick up in there, and I'm actually going to pick up, I pop that to the back, I'm going to pick up that loop as my last stitch, and then we'll call it done. So my next step is to get rid of this provisional purple yarn here, so I'm going to gently snip it off. I've got my scissors, got my purple yarn, and I'm just going to snip all the way around, taking care not to snip my new loops. I'm going to snip off this yarn all the way around. So here we go. I'll take off the first of it, get rid of that long tail, and then I will keep snipping. It's all just going to pull out beautifully as I go. The easiest way to do it is just to snip the stitches on the top, taking care not to snip any of your stitches, and everything will just come out bit by bit. So here I go, snip, snip, snip. Now if you pull your provisional cast on out, you can see there's almost like holes for you to insert your scissors into to snip. Pull it out and insert your scissors into that little hole just to snip all the way along. And there we go, we're left with live stitches on our needles, a little pile of fluff, and we're ready to join our work.